Santa baby, indeed, because Stella Maxwell didn't just whisper holiday cheer this Christmas Eve, she practically set it on fire. While most people were slipping into pajamas, sipping cocoa, and settling into the safe glow of tradition, the former Victoria's Secret angel was doing something far more daring. She was rewriting the visual language of Christmas itself, blurring the line between festive fantasy and unapologetic seduction, reminding the world exactly why her name still carries weight in fashion and pop culture long after she stepped off the angel runway. The images appeared like a slow burn reveal, the kind that doesn't scream for attention but commands it anyway. There she was, dressed just enough to be considered festive, yet undone enough to feel forbidden. The Christmas tree behind her glowed softly, lights twinkling as if they were complicit in the moment, framing her crouched figure as she leaned forward, her open top offering no resistance to gravity or intention. One breast spilled free, not aggressively posed, but casually exposed, a detail that made the image feel more intimate, more deliberate, as if the camera had wandered into a private moment rather than a staged shoot. This wasn't shock for shock's sake. Stella has never needed that. Her power has always lived in restraint, in suggestion, in the kind of confidence that doesn't beg approval. The pose was low, almost predatory, her body folded into itself in a way that drew the eye inward rather than outward. It wasn't about nudity, it was about control. She knew exactly what she was giving, and more importantly, what she wasn't. Her gaze did most of the talking. That slow, heavy-lidded look aimed directly at the camera carried a message that didn't need captions or explanations. It was a "come hither" glance, yes, but layered with something more complex, a knowing awareness of the audience, the timing, the outrage it would spark, and the desire it would ignite. This was Stella Maxwell fully aware of the cultural moment she was stepping into, choosing Christmas Eve not by accident, but by design. Then came the second image, and with it, a shift in energy. Gone was the tree, the ornaments, the overt symbols of the holiday. Instead, she lay stretched out on a white-sheeted bed, the color choice doing exactly what it was meant to do, stripping the scene of distraction. White sheets are never innocent in fashion photography, they are a blank canvas, a suggestion of purity that exists only to be contradicted. Stella reclined into them effortlessly, her body angled in a way that felt inviting without being explicit, her expression softer but no less intentional. It was here that the contrast became impossible to ignore. The holiday season is built on nostalgia, family, warmth, and tradition, and Stella placed herself just outside of that framework, like a temptation waiting at the edge of the room. The images didn't mock Christmas, they challenged it. They asked an unspoken question: who decides what is appropriate joy, and who gets to define how desire shows up during the most curated time of the year? For a woman whose career was built on selling fantasy, this wasn't new territory. Stella Maxwell has always understood the mechanics of allure. From her early days walking for Victoria's Secret, she mastered the art of being looked at without looking needy, of appearing accessible while remaining distant. Even now, years after stepping back from the brand that made her a household name, she still knows how to hold the camera's attention in a way that feels effortless. But this shoot carried a sharper edge than her runway days. There was no corporate gloss, no brand messaging, no manufactured innocence. This was Stella on her own terms, unfiltered, uninterested in playing nice or safe. And that's exactly why it landed the way it did. The internet reacted instantly, predictably split between admiration and outrage. Some praised her confidence, calling the images bold, artistic, and refreshingly honest. Others clutched their pearls, declaring the shots inappropriate, tasteless, or desperate. That reaction, too, felt intentional. Stella has been in this industry long enough to understand the currency of conversation. In an era where attention spans are short and images disappear into endless feeds within seconds, provocation isn't just effective, it's necessary. By choosing Christmas Eve, by placing her body in direct contrast to a holiday built on restraint and wholesomeness, she guaranteed that the images wouldn't just be seen, they'd be talked about. And beneath the surface-level controversy, there was something more revealing at play. These photos weren't just about sex appeal, they were about autonomy. About a woman who has spent years being styled, directed, posed, and packaged, now deciding exactly how she wants to be seen. The slight messiness of the open top, the casual spill of skin, the unpolished intimacy of the bed shot, all of it suggested a rejection of perfection in favor of authenticity. Stella didn't look like an angel here. She looked human. Confident, yes. Seductive, absolutely. But also grounded, present, and unapologetically herself. There was no smile begging approval, no exaggerated pose meant to flatter from every angle. Instead, there was stillness. Comfort in her own skin. A quiet defiance in choosing pleasure and self-expression in a season that often pressures women to shrink, behave, and conform. The images also spoke to a larger shift in how former supermodels navigate relevance. Once upon a time, aging out of a major brand like Victoria's Secret meant fading quietly into nostalgia. But Stella belongs to a generation that refuses to disappear gracefully just to make others comfortable. She doesn't need a runway to validate her presence. Her body, her gaze, her timing, those remain powerful tools, and she wields them with precision. As the comments rolled in and the images spread beyond her immediate audience, it became clear that this wasn't just another holiday post. It was a reminder. A declaration. Stella Maxwell is still very much in control of her narrative, still capable of disrupting expectations, still willing to lean into desire rather than apologize for it. And whether people loved or hated the images, they couldn't ignore them. Christmas Eve passed, the tree lights dimmed, and families returned to their routines. But the impression lingered. In a sea of predictable holiday content, Stella offered something raw, intimate, and undeniably provocative, a visual exhale from perfection. She didn't just dress up and partially undress for the holidays. She claimed space in a moment that rarely leaves room for women to be both festive and free, sensual and self-possessed. And in doing so, she didn't just land herself on the so-called naughty list. She reminded everyone watching that sometimes, breaking the rules is the whole point. The images quickly became more than just a moment on social media, they became a conversation about desire, power, and control. Stella Maxwell's presence in the digital space has always been magnetic, but this shoot reminded the world that her allure doesn't rely on anyone else's narrative. The photos were carefully curated yet gave the impression of spontaneity, a paradox that few models can pull off convincingly. Each frame carried a subtle tension between vulnerability and strength, a silent declaration that the power to provoke has always been hers, long before she stepped onto the global stage as a Victoria's Secret angel. Some viewers couldn't help but compare her current work to the peak of her runway career, the days when cameras flashed relentlessly, and she was one of the faces representing fantasy at its most polished. But this was different. This wasn't corporate, this wasn't commercial. It was personal. The decision to release these images on Christmas Eve added another layer to the narrative. Timing is everything, and Stella understood that. While millions were wrapped in the comfort of tradition, she was challenging it, bending it, reshaping it, and reminding the world that holidays don't have to mean uniformity or restraint. There was also a quiet rebellion in the way she engaged with the camera. Most models at her level are taught to project perfection, to create desire at arm's length. Stella, however, blurred that line. Her eyes weren't just looking at the lens, they were looking through it, at the audience, testing boundaries, inviting reflection. She was reminding her viewers that sensuality doesn't exist only in studios or runways, and it doesn't require apology. The subtle arch of her body, the casual tilt of her head, the soft parting of her lips, each gesture communicated something deeper, something that couldn't be captured in words alone.